Hello there, and we are here for the last tier list of the three base scripts. Badmore Rising. I am kind of attached to Badmore Rising. My very first Clocktower game was actually BMR, and I was the chambermaid, so I have feelings about this script. But yeah, let's get to it. As per usual, I will evaluate the characters based on what my perceived impact is when it comes to contributing to the win condition of their own team. So some of the placements may sound weird, but I will motivate them, and of course, if you disagree, you're welcome to tell me. Let's start from the grandmother in script order. Grandmother. Um, Grandmother's a tough one. I think it's at the very least in A tier. So the grandmother has the strong ability to confirm a townsfolk and whatever may come from their own ability. Um, how good this is really depends on the storyteller. There are some choices that I think are just bad, like Sailor and Gambler, because they either have trouble dying or they can die whenever they want, which kind of negates the downside of the grandmother as a character. But grandmother confirming something like a courtier, a gossip, even a minstrel, all very strong choices. Grandmother is also able to potentially confirm a goon or a pacifist, which helps with figuring out weird events like Nice of Not Deaths or Execution Survival for roles that are very powerful. So yeah, overall Grandmother is a pretty good role. I don't know if A would be more appropriate than B, but the fact that there's also a gossip on the script I think makes Grandmother even stronger. Because the grandmother is great gossip fodder. It's great professor fodder. It's just all round very useful. I've not seen the grandmother really end the game by dying with their grandchild in any BMR. It does accelerate the pace a bit, but good usually has it coming. So yeah, there it is. Sailor. I think Sailor's probably B tier. Sailor can be really strong, but it is a little storyteller dependent and also dependent on their own agency. Using the Sailor to drunk a minion is one of my favorite things to do, personally. Drunk in the DA is especially strong. Drunk in the Demon is not usually a great idea, but could work if the good team is doing particularly awfully. But in most of the time, like the main usefulness of a sailor is to keep the gun good, try to stay immortal. Yeah. Professor Rez on a sailor would be incredible, but again, a confirmed sailor is probably going to die again eventually and does not get any further information. So good enough, enjoyable to play. I would say that most games I've seen of the sailor just end up with the sailor being tested on day 1 or day 2 for the sake of confirming whether their pick was strong or not. And then the sailor may or may not get framed as a DA or actually be the DA. But yeah. Chambermaid. I am biased towards this character. It is in my top 5 of favorite characters ever, so take this with a grain of salt, but Chambermaid is so game solving in BMR that I think it deserves the S spot. But it does, the information they get still does depend on their picks and their timing and a lot of other factors. But there's very little drunkenness and poisoning on BMR, and most of it is knowable or controllable by good. See, Courtier, Innkeeper. Mistral is the only factor that is not really controllable, but also if you have a Mistral Knight, then you've already executed a minion, and for the most part, you're doing pretty well on the front of finding evils. Chambermaid is very threatening. I wouldn't say as threatening as maybe a Gambler or Exorcist for a demon, but knowing the wake pattern of other players when so many townsfolk on the scripts do not wake is incredible. I would say demons like Poe and Shabeloth, which are very destructive, are the ones that are most threatened by the Chambermaid, which I think is where the Chambermaid should be. Zombuul may wake or may not wake, so it's a bit more difficult for the Chambermaid to actually find Zombuul candidates. Puka always wakes, but Puka is also kind of one of the worst demons ever. Yep. I think Chambermaid is just so good. Like, genuinely, if you're evil, set your sights on killing the Chambermaid as soon as possible. Because the Chambermaid is going to give you trouble, and they will find out if you're lying about your bluff. Yeah, Exorcist and S, very similar reasons. While it is kind of difficult in BMR to figure out exactly what went on a night and no deaths, Exorcist does a lot in helping the town against, again, the most dangerous demons, which I think is what warrants the S spot. If the Exorcist interprets the amount of that correctly, they pretty much know who the demon is, or they can clear candidate in a game where the demon cannot move. That is incredible, genuinely incredible. Innkeeper. I'll put Innkeeper in A. I think Innkeeper is really good. Like, protecting from death in a script where there is so much of it is great. I've rarely seen Innkeepers actually make it to Final 3, if ever. I don't think that typically happens. Like, a good Innkeeper is not going to do that, because they're too much of a threat to the evil team. Only reason I'm not putting the Innkeeper in S is, again, they're kind of identifiable in the way that they have to be the ones protecting people. There are no other roles in this group that do. And besides that, the downside of drunkening is, for some roles, bad. So Innkeepers cannot just protect the Chambermaid and Exorcist willy-nilly, which are basically the strongest roles. Because if they get drugged, their information doesn't matter, and even if they just have a threat of being drugged, their information does not matter. Good protects for the Innkeeper are mostly the roles that are spent, or that don't think they're going to be relevant for some time. So, you know, for example, a courtier who's not planning to spend, a professor who's planning to hold it. So there's still a lot of usefulness for an Innkeeper, but not quite as much as Chambermaid or Exorcist, in my opinion. Gambler. No brainer. Confirm one person every night until you die. Easy. Gambler also goes before the Puka on the Night Order, which means that if the Gambler gambles the Puka before they become poisoned, they still die. I don't know if this was intended by design or not. I genuinely think it should be different. Mostly because Puka is already bad and does not need to interact that way with the Gambler, if I'm being honest. But as long as it's not changed, that's where the Gambler is staying. The worst thing that a Gambler can do is gamble a goon and fake confirm them. And if they do that, the goon is going to be good until they change alignment anyway, which is still pretty damn strong. Yeah, Gossip. I think Gossip is also a solid A. I might have considered S if it wasn't for, you know, the three things that are already in S that are extremely overpowered, even for BMR. A lot of how useful Gossip is depends on the choices of Gossip that they make, and how much more death there is on the script. I've seen Gossip be very useful at narrowing down demon candidates based on how many deaths the good team expects to see, which is pretty good. Gossip can also solve for possible hidden outsiders, possible minions, presence of DA, mastermind, and so on and so forth. It is a solid role. I've underestimated the Gossip before as evil, and I've been in trouble for it. It is better than it might look at glance. And also, again, Gossip can remove death hazards like the grandmother, and can lock the good and even just kill good players that are considered very sus for no reason. I think that is a perfectly reasonable use of gossip. Courtier. If I'm honest, I think in most games, the Courtier is probably about C tier. So here's the thing, Courtier is OP. You can make the demon drunk for 3 nights and 3 days. If you hit. That is a 25% chance with no other factors included. Any other thing, you don't know if you're successful or not. Like, you can drunk the DA on the first night and know for a fact that unless you're puka poisoned, then any person that survives execution needs to be good. You can drunk the Godfather, which is a really funny way to use that ability, but I've seen it happen. You can drunk the Mastermind when you think there might be a Mastermind night, but it is very hard to verify whether or not the courtiering has been successful. And frankly, I've also seen Courtier be a bluff more often than I've seen it in play, which is another reason why I think Courtiers don't really get much trust. But again, that's my personal experience. Your own experience may be different. Why MMMV? Professor. I'm not entirely sure where I would put Professor. My gut tells me A. Professor in practice is probably closer to S, but Professor in BMR kind of has the weird pressure of resurrecting the first executee and then waiting until somebody kills them. Because resurrecting the first person who was executed on day 1 specifically and succeeding at that is the only way for a professor to mechanically distinguish themselves from a Shabuot candidate. And obviously that brings about the complications of what if on the first day you don't execute a townsfolk? What if you execute a townsfolk and they survive? What if your resurrect is, you know, a full pacifist? There's a lot of roles that don't necessarily benefit much from a professor resurrect, because sure, they can be confirmed good and that's great, but if they don't have any information or any other mechanical use for the town, they're just going to die before the final day of the game anyway, and the professor will die with them. Maybe I should put the professor in B, honestly. Should I? Yeah, I've changed my mind. I think Professor stays in B. Again, this is based on my own personal experience with BMR. If I think about what I've put on A so far, Grandmother, Innkeeper, and Gossip, I have seen all 3 of those townsfolk have a better impact for the good team than the Professor in a game of BMR pretty much every single time. I was once in a game with a late Professor Resurrect, which was very strong, because it confirmed the Professor, which at the time was a big demon candidate. But it was very, very situational. Oh, Minstrel. Minstrel is a very interesting one. Again, this is a character that I would put somewhere in the range of A to B. I will provisionally put the Minstrel in B. I think the interesting thing about the Minstrel is any night that there are some deaths, you know that it's not a Minstrel night, which means that from your own perspective as the Minstrel, you cannot have executed the minion the day before. Unless you are specifically puka poisoned. Innkeeper drunkenness does not work, because the Minstrel drunkenness kicks in before that. And Goon is not relevant, so it's pretty much just that. My only issue with Minstrel is BMR is a script that has a very brisk pace when you're dealing with demons that are very destructive, and a very slow pace with the other 2, those being Zombu and Puka. But Minstrel is really more effective with Shabuloth and Poe, because it slows down the clock, as does Courtier when they hit. but it's easier for the Minstrel to get a Minstrel Knight than for the Courtier to get ahead. And Minstrel Knights, when it comes to Zombu and Puka, may or may not matter really. But the situations where they matter is if the Zombu has not been killed once and then gets executed on a Minstrel Bay. Then they just lose both of their lives immediately because they're drunk. And for Puka, if there is also a Mastermind in play and the Puka gets executed on a Minstrel team. Other than that, 0 deaths, 1 death, yeah, whatever. Probably a Zombu game. Yeah, I'm also a little bit salty because my experiences as the Minstrel were being killed by a gossip that I don't think was warranted, and also being the drunk and not knowing it. And it didn't matter because we didn't execute any evil players before that. It was not in BMR though. But yeah, I have yet to see a game where a Minstrel does so much that I would want to put it on the same level as in Keeper or Gossip or the like. Tea-Lady. Okay, hear me out. Hear me out. Tea-Lady is most often a blank token, and I have to keep myself from putting it in D tier. The way that people play Tea-Lady on the script is, oh, yes, let's execute my neighbors on day 1. Nobody will ever suspect me. No, you're just going to die, and your neighbors are going to die too. And the worst part is if you don't play that way, then you're adding a layer of, what's it called? Like basically, if you don't out Tea-Lady because you're trying to protect your neighbors, then that's fine. But you may or may not die before you get to test them. And also, they may or may not die, which means that if you have a Night of No Deaths, you don't know if it's because your neighbors got attacked or for pretty much any other reason. In every single game I've seen with a Tea-Lady, they've tried to get their neighbors executed, or someone else has tried to get their neighbors executed on day 1 for a Tea-Lady test. The evil team immediately figure out what was going on, then the Tea-Lady died and the Tea-Lady's neighbors died. That, except in the cases where those neighbors were important to confirm for reasons related to their roles, and living another night actually helped them, that was genuinely bad. Like, I was once the Tea-Lady that was keeping the gambler from dying. You don't want to be the Tea-Lady in that position, ever. But sometimes the tokens fall that way, and you cannot help it. Pacifist. I have to put the Pacifist in B, I'm afraid. I think, in practice, Pacifist is a bit stronger than Saber, because Pacifist can save whomever. And observing who gets executed and who survives, based on there being or not being a Pacifist claim, is much better information than executing a Sailor claim. With that said, Pacifist saves that actually help the solve or help good in general are quite rare. Most of the time on the first day you'll see a meta execution like of the Sailor or Tea-Lady type, and the Pacifist won't matter even if they exist. And then, you know, storytellers might just save a player late in the game that gets suspected even if their role is important, or they get framed as the yay, and that's it. Pacifist is kind of a sad bird. I wish that it was used better by storytellers in general, but it is what it is. Oh, here's my favorite fool. Easy D tier. Easy. It does not do what the Sailor can do. Drunken people, especially evil players or outsiders. It does not do what the Pacifist can do. Saving players that are important for the good team. It just sits there, waits to be executed or die in night, and has no idea when they've lost their lives or not. Why is full in the script? I seriously need an explanation for how exactly the fool is helping the good team in BMR. I completely disagree that that exists. Adding or subtracting a death on a script that is based on solving for the evil team with the amount of death at night is an outsider thing to do. The Fool is 100% an outsider of the script. It's just bad. Like, goodbye. Go to outsider jail. Goon. Yeah, Goon is ass. There's nothing else to say. Goon is the only way that you can add an evil player to this game, which is pretty much what helps the evil team the most. Goon is an S tier bluff if there is an evil Goon in play, because an evil player can just claim to be the Goon if people think that there is a Goon. And the causing chaos, like bypassing chambermaid, like the Goon is so many shenanigans. I don't love the Goon personally, based on my playstyle and my preferences, but I reckon that the Goon is just really good at what it does, especially on this script. But BMR as the home script of the Goon, great, absolutely awesome. Lunatic, on the other hand, just no. Like, find me a game of BMR in which the Lunatic did not know on day one that they were the Lunatic. Maybe smaller 1-minion games where Lunatic exactly learns the minion and the minion just plays along with it. Sure, whatever. But Lunatic is really not much of an outsider here. At best, it's a mid-tier bluff for like a Godfather or a minion that hasn't spoken to their demon yet. That's about it. And it's not really that great. Like, backing out of claims is still possible as a lot of other roles on the script. I don't think the Lunatic is really needed for that. I don't know. I love Lunatic on scripts that have ways for the Lunatic to doubt their alignment for longer than a day. Marionette, Magician, Puppy Grower, you name it. Just not this. I think Lunatic here is just awkward. Tinker, 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 Tinker. A? Question mark? I think Tinker in A is fine. It's kind of the same reasoning as the other roles in A. What these roles do for the good team, Tinker kinda does for the evil team. Maybe B? Somewhere in the A to B range is where I put it. Adding an extra death, one, it could be a pro charge, it could be bouquet, it could be mastermind, it could be a gossip. That's pretty good. But the interaction with gossip is something that I specifically like because Tinker is a great kill for a gossip that had it correct. But when a Tinker dies, the gossip is going to question whether or not it is due to their gossip, for absence of any other possible sources of death. Also, Tinker is just really fun to play. I once had a game as the Tinker where I just claimed T-Lady and I cut out the demon because they claimed to have gambled me as the T-Lady after I died. And I was like, sure you did. Yeah. Moonchild. I'll put the Moonchild in B. I think Moonchild has potential to be very confirming in ways that can be good for good as much as they can be good for evil, depending on who they choose. But honestly, in most games where the Moonchild is just open about the role, what I see is that they survive until later into the game because the evil team is worried about being Moonchild chosen, or the demon being Moonchild chosen. And that pretty much does it for them. Which means that it's closer to blank token than Tinker and Goon are. It's not a bad outsider. I think I like Moonchild for the added possible destruction of taking the life of one of the players on the good team. But also not as impactful as the other two. It's not as flexible. Godfather. I love the Godfather. I think it is a role that has information and killing power. It's such a good minion. So good. I believe the Godfather is probably an A for me. I like what it does. It's good at what it does, but it's also it depends if it hits or not, right? So it's if you manage to kill an outsider during the day, or if a Tinker explodes, then Godfather can really help. And I love it combined with Poe and or Zambul, because the sourcing of the kills can then help the evil team build words around possible mastermind later on when there are fewer kills or recover a Poe charge, etc. etc. Godfather pairs especially well with Tinker, because Tinker can be killed at the beginning of the day, and it is not possible for them to really know that. So yeah, solid minion. Gets 1 or 2 kills in most of the games that I've seen, which is honestly pretty good for a minion ability. DA is undoubtedly yes. I think it's quite hard to get creative with DA, on BMR specifically. Sometimes it's bad to protect good players, even if it frames them, because it slows down the killing. But DA really helps the Zambul. Having people survive execution in a Zambul game is really strong, because it keeps the Zambul hidden for a long time. DA is disgusting with Poe. In a good way, in a bad way, I don't really know. But like, if you think that you can be the Poe, you can charge when there are like 6 people alive, when 2 of them are your minions, and then triple kill the day after. Or even just with the DA, actually, yeah. Poe and DA is hands down the most destructive combination of evil characters that BMR can muster. And the other very useful thing about the DA is that it is the only character that can easily turn to goon and keep them evil. If you know who the goon player is, or you have a strong suspicion, you just DA protect them every other night until the goon dies. And that's it. Boom, done. Assassin. I'm undecided if the assassin should go in A or in B. I think A is probably good enough. It has a little less killing power than Godfather, because it's pretty much just once per game. There's no way to get more than 1 kill as the assassin, but it's still pretty strong. Again, can cover for Poe charge very easily, can assassinate a gambler on a night where they wouldn't have otherwise died. Assassin is really good at framing worlds. It's also a great exorcist counter. Got exorcised? Well, no problem. Get your assassin to hit the exorcist. So yeah. Mastermind, I'll be real, I think Mastermind is B at best, probably C. I mean, I'll leave the Mastermind in B just for reasons that I'll go over when I actually get to the demons. But the Mastermind is 100% stronger on the script than it is in play. Mastermind as a script character, easily S tier. Mastermind as an in-play character may or may not make an impact. More often not. This is because when it comes to Knights of No Deaths, first of all, there are characters that can cause death tonight, even when the demon is dead. There's Gossip, there's Tinker, there's Assassin. Not Godfather, because that assumes that you executed the demon the day before, but there's still a decent amount of death that can occur. And I'll say, generally speaking, having a mastermind on the script will make town more careful about their executions. But again, the mastermind does not really have to be in play for that. So it's difficult for me to rate really where it should be. I also don't think Mastermind is particularly fun for the Mastermind player, but I could be wrong about that. I think Zambul probably deserves about C or D. I think D might be a little bit too rough, but the Zambul really struggles against the other demons. I think Zombull is marginally better than Puka, purely because it wastes more executions. But as the Zombull, catching up to all the possible confirmation there is, made by all the roles like Gambler, Gossip, even Exorcist, even Chambermaid to some degree, it's really difficult. You have to have a DA that's doing a grand job, you have to have a Godfather and an Assassin who are covering for the nights that you don't get kills. Realistically, the only way to cruise a Zombull game is keeping the Zombull hidden for a good few days. It has to be hidden for enough days that there are so many dead people that town can't really afford to execute into every Zombull world. Otherwise, I normally see Zombull get solved and then GG. I think if anything I would put Puka in D. I sincerely do not see great use for the Puka on the script. The only benefit, they can kill the Exorcist. They can kill the Exorcist and still have kills on the night that they get exorcised. So there's an offset of 1. But the Exorcist knows that, and they're going to build worlds where the Puka is their target before they die. Puka also gets rid of Innkeeper, which is good. It's easier for the Puka to kill an Innkeeper, I guess, in some way, or to kill the Inkept players, rather, when the Innkeeper is poisoned. But Puka also has a lot of problems with, say, Professor, because they have to wait another night to target the Professor's Resurrect. And yeah, it's just generally like a character that I think fits awkwardly with the mechanics of the good characters that exist in BMR. That's me. But if I'm evil in BMR, I'd rather have any other demon. So that is my logic for rating the Puka so low. Shabalov is fine. Shabalov is probably A or B, I think. I don't know, I suppose the B is good enough. It requires a little bit of storytelling cooperation to not be complete trash. Generally speaking, I think it's fair to let the Shabalov get a double kill every now and again, but if they're consistently killing 2 people, they should not be allowed to do that. It is a little too strong. But let's take the Poe, and I will put the Poe in S tier. The Poe has an average kill rate of a maximum of 1.5. If, as the Poe, you go charge 3, charge 3, charge 3, you're getting 1.5 kills per night. So, but you also have to think about the fact that you're basically outing that it's a Poe game if you're doing that. Because it's really difficult to explain more than 3 deaths on more than one night without the Poe in play in BMR. Actually, I don't think it's even possible. I would have to double check, but I don't think it's possible. Like, the Gossip can kill someone every night, the Gambler can kill themselves once, the Moonchild can kill someone once, the Tinker can kill someone, well, kill themselves once. That's pretty much it. So, it's that and then the minion abilities. But Godfather is execution dependent, and Assassin is also once per game. So yeah. I think giving 1.5 kills to a Shabalov per night is generous, considering what the Poe has to do to achieve the same kill power. If that makes sense. Yep. I think Poe is pretty much a no-brainer for us here, because again, Poe and DA is a combination made in hell. It can end the game as early as Final 7 or something around that. It's incredible. You can get to a Final 7 that is unwinnable for the good team if you have these 2 characters. And that is not true for any other combination of 2 evil characters in BMR. Let that sink in for a second. That is why these 2 are in S tier. And also generally the whole that EA can win the game for their own team a day early if they time their protects correctly. That is nuts. Maybe I've been a little bit too harsh on the Shab to put them on B tier. I mean, the fact that they can't control their kills, they don't have to delay them one night like the Puka, is pretty damn good. I would say the Shabu is significantly better than the Zombu, so maybe it should be an A. But also, the Poe is significantly better than the Shabu, so maybe the Shabu should stay in B. Decisions. I'll just put the Shabu in the middle. Yeah, you can pretend that it's in the middle. Just hanging here. Yeah. And that would be our tier list. So once again, I would be more than happy to hear your thoughts in the comments. Please leave some. And I'll think about what else to make next. Maybe I will get into reviewing characters one by one. That could be interesting. If you have any ideas for what other content you would like to see, please let me know. With that, I will see you in the next one.